Hi, everyone. It is such an honor to be with you here today. I am here to talk about embracing self-compassion with resilience. So this is a really great medicine for the world right now, self-compassion. You may have heard of it before, but if you haven't tried it, I would really recommend to adopt some practices, and we will talk about those today. So I will first introduce myself. My name is Nikita, and I am the founder of a movement called I Am Resilient, the journey toward collective optimal well-being. So I Am Resilient brings consilience, so bringing together different knowledge systems so that we can adopt new tools and practices and share tools and practices to promote resilience. This is needed right now because we are dealing with problems we've never dealt with before. And we do have the resources to mobilize in the world right now, as long as we connect and we use them well. So we're here to empower one another and to cheer each other on. So let's talk about self-compassion. So self-compassion is a powerful key to unlock individual and collective resilience. During this session, people will explore and contemplate what self-compassion is, why it's important, and how it can be practiced as a tool for resilience. So while the global climate remains tumultuous and the future appears uncertain, when individuals learn self-compassion as a tool for resilience, the benefits extend beyond themselves and their communities. So really let that sink in. So let's go to the first slide here. Perfect. So resilience includes both the innate drive for human life, as well as the intentional cultivation of inner and outer strength required to weather the storms of life. Resilience to collective, unanticipated, and ongoing challenges that have never been experienced before must be met with compassion for self and others. Self-compassion is an inner resource to mobilize for resilience. Kristin Neff, the guru of self-compassion, writes in her book, actually called Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself, that all humans have emotional wounds of some sort or another. So why self-compassion? Self-compassion is a powerful key to unlocking individual and collective resilience. Self-compassion has gained tremendous attention in the field of research. An influential leader and author in this field, as I mentioned, is Dr. Kristin Neff, but a lot of the practices actually stem from Buddhism. So as a definition, Kristin Neff describes self-compassion as being composed of three main elements. And those elements are: one, self-kindness; two, common humanity; and three, mindfulness. So we'll explore these in a little bit of depth later on, but let's talk about why self-compassion is important. Self-compassion actually promotes resilience in oneself and the collective, like we talked about. When one practices self-compassion, compassion towards oneself, one can tap into greater compassion for other people. Imagine the difference this makes. So when we meet distress in our lives, we experience our conscience coming online. It's both relationally and socially mediated, and it can propel us towards action. It can also help us speak out about what's right, or it can lead us to abandon what matters. This is more likely to happen when the situation is coercive or there's a perceived risk involved. We may compromise our values, commitments, and responsibilities, which are foundational to our integrity, eventually numbing the conscience. So the conscience is our nervous system alerting misalignment and potential loss of connection of integrity. When we cultivate self-compassion, we get curious about the way we feel and the causes of our stirring conscience, telling us to listen. We can ask ourselves questions like, what is important to me here? What are the repercussions? Am I taking action to appraise this? And what is my responsibility? Cinda Rushton says in her book, Moral Resilience, the cultivation of personal integrity is a precondition for relational integrity. When we actively engage in the exploration of the call of conscience, we strengthen our integrity and our connection with ourselves. This action of living in relational integrity is contagious. When we approach the exploration with self-compassion, we inspire other people to strengthen compassion. And self-compassion requires moving from fueling anger, fear, and disrespect with our thoughts and actions to turning toward our basic goodness, our kindness, and leveraging our moral authority. Using this as a model to coach and inspire others can fuel a wholesome collective. So, what is the opposite of self-compassion? What could we be doing instead? The opposite of self-compassion is actually self-criticism. So the amygdala, our primitive feature in the brain, you've probably heard of before, is designed to detect threats and prepare accordingly. When we're threatened, we go into fight or flight. The amygdala sends signals to increase cortisol, blood pressure, adrenaline, and mobilize strength to ensure that we're protected. This system was designed to deal with physical attacks, but when it comes online, when we sense emotional attacks, including those we have against ourselves, we need to be able to work through that in a different way. So over time, the stress response can deplete various neurotransmitters, including the ability to feel pleasure, if this is happening all the time. When we feel voiceless and powerless, and we don't act from compassion, but rather leave distress unaddressed, it can surface as fighting, outbursts, passive-aggressive behavior, self-loathing, depression, resentment, despair, all of these things. And if this is left ongoing, the person experiencing it may actually associate this behavior with themselves, and they may feel blame, shame, frustration, and disillusionment. Attuning to ourselves helps us to understand both our inherent goodness and the perspectives of other people. When we know that empathy and compassion strengthen trust with others, we can use self-compassion to strengthen trust in ourselves. So, self-compassion and resilience. Resilience requires trade-offs when integrity is compromised. So think about that. We're required to be resilient when something is challenging. When we make those trade-offs explicit, rather than discounting or ignoring them, we can choose to meet ourselves with compassion. We can tend to the compromised part with compassion and remain connected to our values. We can remind ourselves of the contours of our control and our roles and responsibilities. When we meet stress, viewing oneself as capable promotes resilience by allowing for clearer discernment, engagement in self-stewardship, and motivating us towards action. Rather than negating the stressor, it's important to pause and mobilize the inner and the outer resources like eating, sleeping, breathing, engaging in constructive inner dialogue, taking action, regulating the nervous system, asking for help, all of these things. So mobilizing those resources to decrease moral stress and enhance resilience. When we engage in practices that demonstrate compassion towards oneself, we give power and voice to a part of ourself that's being asked in that moment to be heard. Paying attention to this, we learn more about our ethical standards, which can generate positive change both individually and collectively through productive actions and inspiring other people. Generating empathy and compassion build trust. When they're demonstrated toward oneself, inner trust and self-compassion promote a sense of security. When they're demonstrated towards other people, it allows for trusting relationships, ethical responses, and is actually a countermeasure to serious harm. Building trust within ourselves requires responding to the internal cues with compassion. When you're hungry, eat. When you're tired, sleep. When you have to use the bathroom, use the bathroom. Steward oneself. As we build a closer relationship to ourselves, we uncover a greater awareness of what actually matters to us. Self-compassion works to bring us in alignment with ourselves, which allows us to overcome challenges and act compassionately towards other people while seeing situations more clearly. When integrity is present, fear is neutralized and compassionate action can surface. So let's talk about the social ecological framework for resilience. You may have heard of the social ecological framework before. So as we know, resilience is impacted by psychological, biological, structural, environmental, and cultural resources. By understanding that all things factor into one's resilience or a lack of resilience, it allows us to get curious. Resilience is strengthening, growing, learning, adapting, and progressing in new ways through and after stress. It is both innate and it's practiced intentionally to ensure resources outweigh allostatic load. This promotes resilience. Resilience is challenged by time, pressure, exhaustion, uncertainty, conflict, distraction, and other situational factors. And when people are persistently exposed to suffering and resources are not sufficient, one is unable to cope and develops maybe burnout or PTSD. When people are persistently exposed to the suffering of others, they can experience empathetic over-arousal. So let's strengthen our resilience and change the situation to allow for greater resilience. Let's talk about the science of self-compassion. I love this infographic. This is a heat map from the book called The Neuroscience of Emotion by Adolphs and Anderson at Caltech. And it looks at all of the different emotions and where heat is expressed in the body. So whether directed towards the self or others, thoughts and emotions have the same effect on our bodies, which suggests that self-compassion may be a powerful trigger for the release of self-compassion. I think that's supposed to say compassion may be a powerful trigger. But let's talk about the science of self-compassion. So when we engage in soothing our suffering, we actually tap into our mammalian caregiving system by releasing oxytocin, which some people call the hormone of love and bonding. This is the same chemical that strengthens the parent-child relationship after birth. Oxytocin promotes feelings of trust, calm, safety, generosity, and connectedness, while facilitating warmth and compassion for ourselves. It decreases fear and anxiety while counteracting physiological responses associated with stress, such as increased blood pressure and cortisol, like we talked about earlier in fight or flight. Oxytocin is released when a mother breastfeeds, when parents interact with their young children, and when someone gives or receives soft and tender caress. Whether directed towards self or others, thoughts and emotions have the same effect on our bodies. We must let go of these fears and insecurities to pursue our dreams. By practicing self-compassion, you allow confidence by working with the brain and the body. Let's talk about some practices that we can do. So one practice is giving yourself a calming hug. Now, on the I Am Resilient podcast, some people mentioned that it was their innate drive to hug themselves and soothe themselves during their darkest moments. This is profound. So tenderly giving yourself physical touch with love and care can change the biochemical experience you're having. The second one is cultivating compassion, a compassionate inner dialogue, sorry. So to begin to do this, you can ask yourself, what am I observing? When are you being self-critical and what thoughts are coming up? What are you noticing? You can soften the critical voice. You can say things like, I know you're trying to keep me safe. Thank you. You're not helping. I know you're trying to keep me safe. Thank you. But you're not helping. You can reframe these observations in a calm and kind way. Like, what would a kind friend say to you? Or what would you say to your younger self? If you were older, if you were an elder, what would you say to yourself today? Another one is to keep a gratitude journal. This is very profound. This is a lot of what I Am Resilient does. We have gratitude journals on our website, and we are proponents of journaling every single day and living in a state of gratitude. This significantly has improved my life, and I really believe it will improve yours. So Robert Emmons was one of the foremost researchers in gratitude, and his studies show that grateful people are generally happier, more hopeful, vital, and more satisfied with life. They're also less materialistic and less envious of the success of other people. Wow. The other thing you can do is savor the moment. Notice everyday things that bring us pleasure, because this dramatically intensifies our experience of joy. It shows us that we deserve the joy that we see in life. We are deserving of it, and actually enjoying it will help us to uplift other people. Another one is self-appreciation. What is not broken? What do you appreciate about yourself? What are your strengths? What can you see in your own light? There are gifts and beauty inside you and all around you. Other things that are really helpful are loving kindness meditations. You can allow yourself to be guided. There are loving kindness meditations on Kristen Neff's website, which I have posted here. Her website is selfcompassion.org. I would really recommend going towards that. And even in the study of Buddhism, sometimes you can look up teachings such as the Dhamma